International wants the government, the South African government, to do more to protect foreign nationals in Diepsloot. We're still keeping a very close eye on what's happening in Diepsloot. I remind you, last week we were covering the Zimbabwean national Alvis Nyati was killed in a mob justice attack. So how would we get this right? Well, Amnesty International's Sibusiso Khasa joining us this morning. Sibusiso, good morning to you. And I think that's what everybody would like, is to see more government intervention, not just more police. The question I have for you, though, is how do we do this? Where does government begin to do this? Good morning.
Good morning, Garrett, and good morning to the viewers. And thank you for having Amnesty International. To be honest with you, Garrett, it's not an easy solution that that government can come with, but government does have an obligation, for instance, because the issue is when it comes to the protection of overall human rights for all those who live in South Africa, or even when you are outside the borders, they do have an obligation in terms of the international law, for instance, to protect human rights. And now the issues that we are facing when it comes to the issues relating to xenophobia and migration, for instance, in South Africa, some of those particular issues are caused by the fact that there's lack of action from government. For instance, in terms of dealing with crime in South Africa, we as Amnesty International have, in a number of occasions, complained about the high levels of crime, which obviously affect the right to life and various other rights like right to dignity as well. So our issue has been always the fact that government, there's no action when it comes to even service delivery, for instance, for normal citizens who are living in South Africa, job creation as well. So all those kind of elements that government is not dealing with is the one that is leading to, for instance, some of the citizens taking unlawful action and directing it towards foreign, as in migrants in South Africa. They are blaming them for those particular issues of high unemployment, for instance, or even inequality. So those particular issues, if government can address those particular issues, as well as when it comes to the Department of Home Affairs, if you are talking about, for instance, if you are looking at the asylum seekers system, already we have a backlog of about 150,000 cases that are still there. And we understand that they are working with the UN refugee agents in terms of trying to deal with that particular matter. But it simply means that while that particular issue is still there, you're still going to have a large number of people who are undocumented.
And that's what I was about to ask you, because there is a home affairs issue which many people have spoken to us about, Sibusiso, as well. So that does look like it's being handled. There isn't a quick fix there as far as undocumented foreign nationals. But you've given me a lot, and you've given government a lot as to what they should deal with. But we can't just have another blanket conversation about dealing with crime, dealing with issues of foreign nationals and unemployment. Give me something tangible. It's a last question to you. Give me one thing today, ahead of the Easter weekend, that Amnesty International wants government to go out and do that's realistic today.
What's realistic, Garrett, to be honest with you, is that when it comes to government, they just need to be, the most realistic thing that they can do is just to implement the current plans and laws that they do have. Because most of the time when it comes to South Africa, the main issue is not necessarily lack of plans or even in terms of law. Legislation is there, and in terms of whether it's local legislation or international legislation, the legislation is there and policy is there. The problem is that when it comes to the implementation part, that's the main problem, is that government is not doing so. And that's even the stories that when it comes to when we are on the ground talking to people, whether it's South Africans or migrants, the main issue is always been the fact that when it comes to government in terms of how they handle such matters, it's just that there's no action, there's lack of action completely from government.
Perhaps I'll leave this as my last question, but you just made me think of something now. We were looking at visuals out of Diepsloot from the past few days, Sibusiso. So this will be my last question to you. Obviously, Amnesty International, you and I are talking about this. You're weighing in on the debate. What is Amnesty International doing to help on the ground for the residents who fear for their lives in Diepsloot?
Okay, our role is a bit simple, Garrett, to be honest with you, because we are not like your first responders when it comes to dealing with such issues. But our main issue is to observe and also make sure that we hold government accountable in terms of making sure that they protect, they promote, and also respect human rights, because they do, as I already mentioned, that they do have an obligation in terms of domestic and international law. So for government, it's just simple. For our role is mainly to ensure that we listen to those who are on the ground, both locals and South Africans, and also when it comes to migrants, we listen to all sides and make sure that we hold government accountable.
And I think as much pressure on government to act, it will always be the way forward, Sibusiso, and I appreciate your time. Perhaps what we can do next time is when we talk, you've raised a number of issues. You and I might talk again in a couple of days to come about the updates. Let's get a timeline. Let's find one thing that Amnesty International wants government, Tumza, to actually focus on, and let's put a timeline to this. And I think this is what upsets so many people is we will talk about holding governments accountable. Let's get things done. But I never seem to hear a timeline. We want it done by the end of April. This is what we want done when, by who, and how. So Amnesty International raising very good points, but I'd like to see a timeline to what they want government to do, because that's what I think we need to do with government, is put them under pressure and hold them to a timeline that makes them accountable.
Yeah,
but I appreciate Amnesty International joining us.
Yeah, and I think that follow-up conversation that you initiated there would be essential in getting those answers. Gareth, thanks for that conversation, colleague. But let's move on.